All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Alice. I'm from House ZK. I'm joined here today with Doris, who is CEO of Functor Network. Thank you so much for being here today, Doris. Yeah, really excited to chat with you.
Thank you so much for having me and excited to talk about, more about House of CK.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm wondering, Doris, I'm very curious to hear about the origin story with Functor. So, what led you to found it, and then also why you guys specifically focus on a key store layer?
Absolutely. So to give you the story of Functor Network, we started actually uh, figuring out a way how to really back up a private keys in a way that was truly user owned. And many companies have tried to solve this using multi-party computation, using TEEs. And then actually we saw the paper of Vitalik talking about minimal key store layers. And when I saw his proposal, I think that my mind was completely blown away by his experiment that he's proposing of keystore layers. So the TLDR of a keystore layer is it acts as a verifiable layer of your authentication information that is attached to your smart contract account. So what this does is that the keystore layer acts as a verifiability layer to say, like, is this the owner of this account? Yes, then you can execute this transaction. So what you're storing basically is like the public information of your signature part, and this is what we verify in the keystore layer. So when you have this, the world opened up of many things that you can do, because now you have a way to verify you're the owner of the private key in a way that is fully cryptographically secure.
Got it. And I know that you guys also really focus on the ephemeral key as well. So how does that
Correct.
play in with the keystore layer?
So what's happening here is that, and specifically for AI agents, which is our main focus, is that if you want an AI agent to execute a transaction for you on your behalf, this is an asynchronous transaction. What that means is that this transaction hasn't happened yet, and you'll have to sign or delegate your private key in order to sign the transaction or execute the transaction in the future. So what we do is that instead of delegating your private key, you generate a session key, but with ephemeral, like an expiration date, if you want to see it that way. We actually introduced a new primitive called a maxim. A maxim is essentially a session key or an ephemeral private key with interoperable and composable components. That means that this session key has access to any L2 across the EVM ecosystem.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right. And you mentioned before that there are quite a few cryptographic primitives that you're looking at with PC, then also on the other side with TEs. And then in this space, there's also rising popularity within FHE. ZK is a big player. So wondering about your kinds of predictions for how these kinds of cryptographic primitives will play out sometime in the future. Do you see one approach dominating, or do you see maybe a combination of multiple of these playing out?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. I think that every primitive has its own purpose. It's not like one is better than the other. I mean, if you think fundamentally, NPC, do you know the story of NPC?
Oh, I do not. Tell
You
me.
don't? If I'm not mistaken, I think I saw it probably last year. It was basically a mathematician was asked, there was a problem, like two wealthy people wanted to know who was more rich than the other, but they didn't want to disclose their, how much they had. So they gave this problem to this mathematician, and he was able to disclose who was the richer person without disclosing the amounts. And that's how NPC was born. So it was clearly not made to be decentralized, okay? And I think that's one of the challenges of NPC, is that a lot of people have tried to basically fix NPC in a way that you can have it decentralized, but then you have the end-to-end problem, which is the latency issue and the security components. So I think that NPC works great for a more centralized, let's say like a Fireblocks infrastructure, where you have like more institutional compliant infra that you need to sign transactions and have to comply to a certain thing. You can definitely solve this with other technologies, but let's say that compliance-wise, you need to have a more centralized party, then you could use NPC for that. As well for TEs. I think TEs work for verifying and computing, information that you want to make sure that nobody can touch it. And I think that's useful for many cases. But particularly what I see CK, I'm particularly more excited about CK and what CK enables. I think that one of the issues that you have adoption for blockchain is that it's public information. So you still want to have the censorship resistance, part of blockchain and the decentralization. So you don't want to have one party, but you don't want to disclose everything that is going on, right? So if you bring zero knowledge proofs to the table, then this is, for example, ASIC, what is solved, and then you have a more, let's say, trusted environment where you want to execute transactions on change, because now you have the privacy component added to it. And zero knowledge proofs really helps for that. And I think there are other applicabilities to zero knowledge proofs. In general, I was actually talking with my co-founder last week of how zero knowledge proofs are I wouldn't say that's the correct way, but in a way they compress information. So it's kind of like a compression algorithm as well. So you really can optimize for faster transactions using zero knowledge proof, not only for the privacy preserving side of things, but for the computational side of things. So again, that's why I find STK a very fascinating technology, in my personal opinion.
Absolutely. And it's really great that you mentioned both the privacy aspect of ZK and also that kind of scalability portion as well. So yeah, there's a lot of different projects in the space for really trying to focus on on one area versus the other, and some that are like Aztec that are trying to address both. So it's very, very good to see kind of the different use cases that are enabled from it. Yeah, just wondering, we talked a bit about the applications of where ZK could be applied to, but also very interested to hear about your takes on some of the challenges that you see that are within ZK right now, why we haven't really seen a wider adoption in this space as of yet. What do you think are the current barriers that are preventing this more mainstream adoption of ZK?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that one of the biggest problems, I mean, we can divide it in multiple parts, but I think for me, the one that I think anyone that is building should be focusing on developer experience. The DevX in Web3 right now is really lacking because when you try to build something, there's a lack of documentation. And I mean, honestly speaking, you cannot use AI for these things. Like it's actually, you have to do it the old way if you want to see it that way. So I think that we should be doing it in a way that you launch something and you want to make sure the developers are able to implement it with the documentation that it is. There's a massive fragmentation of versioning, which makes it more complex to adopt. And there's very few examples as well. So it makes it harder for a developer to actually use that. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges for adoption. And the other one as well is, for example, when you have challenges of how to build something, you will probably need to be connected in the industry to get access to someone who could help you out. Obviously, you have like the traditional channels of Discord or Twitter, but it makes it a bit harder because of the same part, right? You don't have like the best documentation, so you will have to ask for help. But then the question is, who do you ask help for? And I think that really hinders being a no-brainer technology for someone to say like, hey, I have this infrastructure that needs either better scalability or more privacy, but then I need to basically set up a whole team to do R&D to figure out how we're going to be integrating this. And then you see like the time of development could be higher than the time of the benefits that could bring because of the whole process of integrating. So I think that honestly, it's a massive problem that I don't hear a lot of people talking about, but everyone talks about it in like low key, in like they would say like, yeah, we have these challenges and whatnot. So if you combine like having community building and then you combine use cases as well, and having specifically either libraries or the part of the community, as I mentioned here, I think it really helps in general to have like a better adoption. Right.
And that all ties really down to the developer experience.
DevX, I think it's number one, and then the other side is latency as well. Definitely that is one of the massive problems, I think. if you want to have like mainstream adoption. But as we were talking earlier on, I think it's inevitable when you're creating new technology to have latency issues, scalability issues. As we start iterating and have more adoption, you start tweaking it. So I don't mind having a more slower, because I do get other benefits that other technologies don't give me. And obviously that is dependent on what I'm trying to build for my product, right? So I'm leaving out latency for privacy. If privacy is of utter importance, then yes, I will give it. So it is really not a problem for me. I don't think that's really killing adoption. It's really more about like, I don't know how to use your tool, so I don't know how to implement it in my technology.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really great that you also mentioned that kind of trade-off moves down the privacy and the latency. It's really up to the like developer to decide, well, which one do I want to focus on? And if there is another aspect that I need to sacrifice a bit, then like then that's kind of inevitable for now. But really trying to provide that choice to developers based on their needs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And in terms of some of the like use cases and applications which we previously discussed about, are there any in particular with ZK or with MPC that you're really excited about that you see have a lot of potential?
Yeah, I mean, I just gave a talk in NOIRCON about privacy preserving AI agents. So I think that AI agents, I mean, I'm particularly excited about them because they automate things. And that means that everything that I can automate means more time for me, right? Because I think that's what AI enables, is to do things that you don't want to do or you could delegate for a third party to do. So if you want, for example, an AI agent to be executing a transaction for you on your behalf, let's say that you have a trading strategy that is complex, or you have an information asymmetry that's going to allow you to do more efficient transactions on chain. And imagine you have an AI agent, you trade an AI agent to do this transaction, this trading strategy, and then someone is watching your AI agent with another AI agent, right? The execution of that transaction will be almost at the same time, right? So there's no latency. But then multiply that everyone is watching your AI agent, right? So then there's no benefit of having that AI agent executing that strategy, because now everyone is doing it at the same time. So it defeats the purpose of creating that in the first place, right? And this is where zero knowledge proof, really, like privacy, really comes into play. If you want to automate transactions that are going to be done by AI agents that still have that information asymmetry that you want to have. And then, of course, you want the whole fully autonomous AI agent. So you want to make sure that you don't want to be delegating your keys to the AI agent for many reasons, right? One is that hallucination problems. And two, I don't want to have any issue that the agent didn't execute something correctly, and then you have access to my complete wallet, right? So this is where Functor Network comes into play. But in general, like the part of knowing that you will still be able to execute transactions privately through the AI agent, I think is an uber important component now with this AI agent adoption that we're having.
Absolutely. It's very excited to see those kind of being played into even like applications beyond like the Web3 space as well, into AI agents. Really, really excited that we're finally at that time where we can see more broader adoption. And just wondering about your kind of, if you have any predictions for how you see the space or the ZK space evolving in the next few years. Are there any sort of like opportunities or any kinds of challenges that we can anticipate? Yeah, what are your general thoughts in terms of how the space will evolve?
I think that I will not be I will not be impressed if right now that we see the North Star of like the whole Ethereum being institutional adoption. I think if we want to see institutional adoption, there has to be a privacy preserving component to it. And I am pretty sure that as we're able to create more, again, we were talking at the beginning, developer experience that is developer friendly, like less, you don't have to build a whole circuit yourself, but then you have all this programmable privacy like aspect that is introducing. So making it easier for developers to adopt, then you will start seeing probably more institutional adoption in the space. And I think that zero knowledge proofs, especially for the privacy preserving side of things, will bring trust. And with trust, you have institutional adoption, which more capital inflows into Web3, the more adoption we have as not being considered a side project, but now actually being part of like, when you're deciding to create an architectural application, you're going to say, are we doing this on blockchain or not? But it's more of the technology is already there to be adopted, and we're going to be using these specific stacks with these zero knowledge proofs because we want to make sure the transactions are fully private. Not more on like the experimental side of things as we've seen so far, but more about like what you see in Web 2, where you're going to say like, am I using AWS with a microservice or like monolithic infrastructure, or am I going to be using this blockchain with this privacy preserving components to develop this application for XYZ institutional company? So my prediction will be it will help the institutional adoption, and the other one is on scalability. So I'm very excited to see how we can build faster blockchains using zero knowledge proofs, because that's the issue with blockchain, right? Is right now we're talking about at best 100K TPS, I believe. But I think, I don't know, it's very hard to compare this, but if you were to measure how much computational power this AWS has, in terms of like, if you compare TPS to like an API call, we did this measurement. It's not accurate, but just to put you in context, AWS can handle 10 million TPS, and we're at 100K. So if you want to have blockchain, to have a Twitter on top of it, to have a social media platform on top of it, you have to handle that amount of transactions, right? Or there are many ways to see it. And I do believe zero knowledge proofs enables you to have faster transactions on chain. There's a massive gap. Is it going to be the way? I don't know, but I do know that it's kind of like a scalability problem that zero knowledge proofs really helps to probably one day to achieve it.
Absolutely. And scalability is really important, but then we also mentioned the institutional adoption as well as your prediction. And I believe as we start to see more of that, we can enable more mainstream adoption in general, more burn rockets to be involved. And just like as the last question before we close, what can members of our audience expect coming soon with Functor Network? Do you guys have any kinds of new releases, new announcements coming up? How can members of our audience get involved?
Yeah, with Functor Network, we actually are super excited for like the next month. We're going to be launching a testnet. At the end of the day, Functor Network is an L2. It's a minimalist zero knowledge proof network, but its only purpose is to store signers of smart accounts. So everything else that is not a signer, it's not optimized for. So we're not optimizing to have assets. We're not optimized to have TVL, if you want to see in that way. So we're launching testnet, and we're always excited to see developers to integrate with our Functor Network devnet. So, you know, they can follow our Twitter, and you can see there the launches that we're doing. We're still creating interesting partnerships. We're working with Asset Network very closely to create these components that I was mentioning you of privacy preserving with fully autonomy AI agents.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Doris.
Thank you
for chatting with us. Yeah. Really excited to hear about all the new developments coming up with Functor. It seems like you guys are in a very busy time with testnet coming up. So
yeah.
Very exciting. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Awesome.
Our coverage at NOIRCON. Really incredible to see all of the tremendous strides that the Aztec team is making, as well as all the other teams from the interviews we had today. Really, we're in such a great time to be able to see this transition from theory and research to building real applications, especially within privacy preserving applications. But until then, we'll see you next time.